Good morning and welcome. My name is Mrs. Shane, and I am your child's kindergarten teacher at St. Leo Catholic School, and we're going to talk a little bit about math and science. For our kindergarten math class, we cover a number of topics not only during our math sessions. We practice our math throughout the day and all of our activities as far as lining up to make a transition. If we're trying to count into a group for any other lesson, we use numbers in all of our activities. But we are going to learn how to write our numbers up to 100 by using ones and tens. We will count from 100 from any given number. So if we're starting at 12, they should be able to count up all the way to 100 starting from any given number. And we can count a group of objects up to 20. We will also be learning the terms less than, greater than, and equal to in terms of the number line or a quantity of items. We can be able to look at the number line and say that 3 is less than 5 or 5 is greater than 3. We can also use that same concept in looking at a group of objects. Say we have cookies. We can see if there are 4 cookies on the plate, that is less than a group of 10 cookies on a plate. We will also be identifying patterns and repetition of patterns. We use this daily on our calendar as part of our morning routine. We have the esteemed line leader, and we go through the date of the calendar, the month, the day, the year, what comes next, what comes before, and so on. And on our calendar, each number is a pattern depending on whatever the season is. If it's winter, it might be something like snowman, snowman, snowflake. Or if it's Valentine's Day, it could be heart, heart, Cupid. And we practice that pattern and what would come next in that lesson. We will also be practicing our shapes, and that's not just circle, square, triangle, rectangle, hexagon, but what those characteristics are that make up those shapes. If it's a square, it is 4 equal sides. If it is a rectangle, it is 2 long sides and 2 short sides, and being able to identify what makes a rectangle different from a square. We will also cover triangle and their points, a cylinder, and compare these to everyday objects that we can see in our daily lives. For example, a cylinder resembles a Clorox wipe container or a can of soda. A cone can be represented as a parking cone or an ice cream cone. This also works into our 3D shapes and how our 3D shapes are made up of two-dimensional shapes. A rectangular prism is made up of squares and rectangles, and being able to identify those separately from a cube. We also model these shapes in class with, we have pegs and little gear things, or we've also done it before with marshmallows and toothpicks. That seems to be a big hit. That's something that they can actually put their hands on, they can build it, they can see what it's made up of, and then at the end, they have a fun treat that they enjoy. We will also begin our simple addition and subtraction with math sentences. We practice this with our books, and then we also break up into groups. We can use counters, we can use counting cubes that connect to each other, and we can physically see what it looks like if you have 3 yellow counters and adding 2 green counters, how many you have in all. And we can also reverse that by starting with how many we have in all and what happens if we subtract away 3 green counters. They can see that there will be 2 counters left. This same concept can be used with the less than, greater than, and equal to. We can see that 3 is greater than 2 and 2 is greater than 3, but a number can only equal itself. We break those into parts so that they can better understand that you can make 5 out of the numbers 2 and 3, or 3 and 2, and the other number pairs that go along with each. You can also make 5 with 4 and 1, 1 and 4, and as well as 5 and 0, and 0 and 5. We can see what numbers 11 to 19 and 20 look like when using a 10 frame. We can see that the number 12 is represented by 1 full 10 frame plus 2 additional pieces, or 2 additional ones. We can also see that 2 full 10 frames would be equivalent to the number 20. That also shows them the number. It shows how many are remaining to get to the full next 10 frame. It can show quantity where they're counting objects, but that also practices our skill of counting up from a number. If we can see that a 10 frame is full, we can count up further starting at 10. If we have two full 10 frames and we're trying to get more advanced to the number 22, we would have two full 10 frames, and by then we will be able to count by tens. We can count 10, 20, and then two more ones to equal 22. We will also classify objects by their category, whether we're trying to classify them by color or size or length, or whether it's a living or a non-living object. Those types of things they can see in everyday life, and they can use that to better understand the concept, which will also go into science. The resources that we use in our kindergarten classes, we have our Sadlier math book, which is 2 volumes. They do one where they finish typically around Christmas time, and then we come back from the break, we start the second volume, which goes into the adding and subtracting. We use a lot of manipulatives in math as far as counters, 10 frames, 10 rods, objects. We have all types of things that we use to count. We can use small erasers. We have these plastic bears. And once we get into counting by twos and fives and tens, we can use those same objects. That gives them a visual representation of what that actually looks like. I've also included a copy of the State of North Carolina math standards, which match up with what we cover in our Sadlier math book. In science, we grasp a better understanding of position and motion of objects and how they can be in front of, behind, between, on top of, etc. This also is covered in our math class within our Sadlier math book. We can understand different ways of how objects can move, whether they're back and forth, slow, straight, zigzag, that it's not just an object that moves from one place to another, but how it can change depending on the weather in the room. If it's windy outside, a leaf wouldn't necessarily just fall straight down if you dropped it. If the wind is blowing, that allows the leaf to have more movement as it falls. We also cover how to describe objects based on their physical properties. If something is hot, if something is cold, if something is bumpy, if something is smooth. We go through a lot of these concepts with our resource, which is Mystery Science. And Mystery Science is a great resource, especially for young kids, because they are short and they can grasp their attention. They're very entertaining for the student. We have done a number of Mystery Science lessons on weather and what the weather can be like for each student depending on when their birthday falls in the year. Someone who has a birthday in December where we live could have very different weather from someone who has a birthday in June. And it's kind of cool how they can compare that to each other and see how it's different, and how in different parts of the country, how it can vary even more based on where they are located. We also cover things with objects and plants, animals, and everyday objects, and being able to differentiate, things that are living and non-living are different. They're not the same. They don't require the same things. And plants and animals as well. We can compare plants and animals based on characteristics, whether they're tall, whether they're small, whether they're green, whether they have fur or feathers. And like I said, many of our resources we use are through the Mystery Science website, and I have also attached the North Carolina Essential Science Standards. A lot of our math and science overlap between each other in our math books and our science curriculum. We even work on a few STEM-related projects. We have one coming up this week where they're going to make bridges out of craft sticks and wooden clothespins, and then see how much weight those different bridges can support, which is really cool. I'm just going to give them to them and tell them that they need to create a bridge without showing them a picture, and seeing how that will play out with the students. They'll probably be in groups of 2 or 3, and it'll be a really interesting experiment for them. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time.